quiet drive turned into a moment I never saw coming. My brother rode with me like he had 100 times before, but this time, somewhere between the highway signs and the fading light, he said something that shifted how I understood our past, our family, and myself. What happened next stayed with me long after the engine cooled. Before we begin, I'd love to know where you're watching from. What city or state are you listening from today? And if stories like this speak to you, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video. It truly helps us keep these stories coming, and I'm grateful you're here. I'm telling this now because time has a way of softening the sharp edges, and because some moments don't make sense until you let them breathe. I was 52 when this happened, old enough to think I knew myself, old enough to believe the big emotional surprises were behind me. I was wrong. It was late afternoon when my brother climbed into the passenger seat of my car. The kind of afternoon that feels stretched thin with the sun slanting low and everything tinted gold. We were heading out of town, just a simple drive to check on a piece of property our parents had owned years ago. Nothing dramatic, nothing planned beyond a few hours on the road, and maybe coffee if we felt like it. My brother sat the way he always did, one arm resting near the window, eyes forward, quiet but present. We've always been close in a practical way. Same house growing up, same routines, same unspoken rules. We learned early not to make a fuss, not to dig too deep. Our family believed in getting on with things. As I pulled onto the highway, the familiar hum of tires on asphalt settled in. The radio played softly, some old song I half recognized. I remember thinking how strange it was that silence with him never felt awkward. It felt earned, like a shared language built over decades. The landscape rolled by slowly. Open fields, a few scattered trees, barns leaning slightly with age. It reminded me of childhood drives when our parents sat in the front and we were in the back counting fence posts and arguing about nothing important. I hadn't thought about those days in years, not really. About 20 minutes in, I noticed my brother shifting in his seat. Not restless exactly, just unsettled. He cleared his throat once, then again. I kept my eyes on the road, but something in me tightened. You know when you sense a change in the air before anything actually happens? It was like that. How long's it been since you drove this way? He asked. Years, I said. Maybe since Dad passed. He nodded, staring out the window. Yeah, that's what I thought. Another stretch of silence followed, thicker this time. The road curved gently, and the sun dipped behind a line of trees, throwing long shadows across the windshield. I adjusted my grip on the steering wheel without realizing it. He took a breath, slow and deliberate. There's something I've been meaning to say, he began, then stopped. I waited. I didn't push. That's another thing we learned young, how to wait. When we were kids, he continued, I don't think I ever told you how much you mattered to me. I glanced at him then, surprised. His face was calm, but his eyes were fixed on the horizon, like he couldn't quite look at me yet. We just did what we had to do, I replied carefully. That's how it was. I know, he said, but I carried a lot more than I ever let on, and you were a big part of how I got through it. The words landed heavier than I expected. The car felt smaller somehow. The space between us charged with memories I hadn't unpacked in decades. I thought of late nights, whispered conversations, the way we'd sit on the porch steps when things inside felt too loud. I didn't realize, I said honestly. He finally turned to look at me, and there was a softness there that caught me off guard. That's kind of the point. You didn't have to. You just showed up again and again. My throat tightened. I focused on the road, blinking hard. At my age, you think you're done being surprised by how deeply words can reach. Turns out you're not. We drove on like that, the conversation opening something that had been closed for a long time. He spoke about feeling responsible too early about choices made in silence. I listened, really listened, realizing how much of my own story was tangled up in his. As the sun dipped lower and the sky shifted toward evening, I felt something shift inside me too. Not discomfort, not regret. something steadier, like understanding, arriving late, but right on time. We hadn't reached our destination yet. The drive wasn't over, and neither, I sensed, was what he needed to say. The road narrowed after that, trading wide shoulders for gravel edges and the occasional mailbox standing alone like a quiet witness. I slowed down without thinking. It felt like a place where rushing would be disrespectful. We passed the old turnoff to the school we both attended, now closed, its sign faded and half swallowed by weeds. Seeing it tugged at something in me. I remembered mornings when we walked together, him a step ahead, me trying to match his pace. Back then, I thought he was just quiet by nature. Now I wondered how much he'd been carrying. I used to think, he said, breaking the rhythm of the road, that if I said any of it out loud, it would make things worse. What things? I asked. All of it? He replied. Mom and Dad, the way the house felt, the expectations. I didn't want to add to the weight. I nodded. Our parents were good people in many ways, but emotions were treated like tools you put away, not things you examined. You worked, you provided, you moved on. That was the rule. I remember you stepping in. He continued, when Dad got sick, when Mom checked out emotionally, you didn't complain. You didn't make it about yourself. I felt a quiet resistance rise in me. I was just doing what needed to be done. That's what I told myself too, he said gently. But it shaped us. We drove past a creek where the water caught the last light of day. I remembered skipping stones there once, the way he taught me how to flick my wrist just right. Simple lessons that stayed. He took another breath. There was a moment, he said, when I almost left. Took a job far away, didn't tell anyone. I glanced at him again. I didn't know that. I didn't want you to think I was abandoning you, he said. You were the one person who made that house feel steady. The word steady echoed in my mind. No one had ever described me that way before. Reliable, maybe, responsible, but steady felt different. It felt like a gift. I stayed, he said, because I couldn't imagine you handling everything alone. I felt a mix of gratitude and something else I couldn't quite name. Not guilt, not pride, more like a quiet reckoning with how intertwined our lives had been. The sky deepened into blue, and I turned on the headlights. The dashboard lights cast a soft glow, making the car feel like a small world unto itself. Outside the road stretched on, empty and patient. I didn't realize you felt that way, I said. I wish you told me sooner. He smiled faintly. I'm telling you now. There was a pause, and then he added, I've been thinking a lot about getting older, about what we leave unsaid. That landed close to home. At 52, I'd begun to notice how conversations shifted, how time pressed in quietly. Friends talked about retirement, about health scares, about children grown and gone. The future felt both shorter and more precious. I don't want to carry regrets, he said, especially with you. The property came into view then, the old fence still standing, though crooked, the small house set back among trees. I pulled over near the gate and turned off the engine. The sudden quiet was almost startling. We sat there, the ticking of the cooling engine marking time. The air smelled like earth and leaves. Evening insects had started their chorus. I don't know what this place means to you anymore, he said, looking ahead. But to me, it's where everything started, the good and the hard. I considered that. It means history, I said, and maybe closure. He nodded slowly. That's what I'm hoping for. We stepped out of the car and stood side by side, looking at the house without moving toward it yet. The light was dim now, but enough to see the outlines, the memories filling in the rest. I'm glad you're here with me, he said quietly. I felt the weight of that statement, the years behind it, the trust it carried. Me too, I replied. As we finally walked toward the gate, I sensed that what he'd shared so far was only part of it. There was still something hovering, something unsaid, and I knew the night wasn't done with us yet. We didn't go inside the house right away. The front door stood closed, painting, as if it had decided it had waited long enough already. Instead, we walked along the edge of the property, following a path that wasn't really a path anymore, just a memory worn into the ground. The air had cooled. I wrapped my arms loosely around myself, more out of habit than cold. My brother noticed and slowed his pace, so we stayed in step. "I used to come out here at night," he said, gesturing toward the tree iron when things got loud inside. "I did know," I said again, and this time the words carried more weight. "You were busy holding everything together," he replied. "I didn't want to pull you away from that." We stopped near the old oak tree, the one we used to climb when we were young. Its branches were thinner now, but it was still standing, still rooted. I ran my hand along the rough bark and felt a strange comfort in its familiarity. "This is where I made the decision to stay," he said quietly. "The night before that job interview." I turned to face him fully. "You never told me." He shook his head. "I was afraid if I said it out loud, I'd resent you for influencing my choice, and that wouldn't have been fair." The honesty in his voice was steady, not dramatic. That made it hit harder. "I never asked you to stay," I said. "I know," he replied. "That's what makes it complicated." We stood there, this space between us filled with years of assumptions. I realized how often I'd rewritten our shared history in my own mind, casting myself as the helper, the fixer, without seeing the cost to him. "I thought I was protecting you," he continued, "by being strong, by not needing anything." I let out a slow breath, and I thought I was alone in that. That earned a small, knowing smile from him. The sky was fully dark now, stars faint, but present. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. The world felt wide and quiet, like it was giving us room. "There's something else," he said after a moment. I felt my shoulders tense, not with fear, but with readiness. "Okay, I need you to know," he said, choosing his words carefully, "that my gratitude isn't just about the past. It's about who you are, the way you listen, the way you show up without asking for credit." I looked down at the ground, suddenly aware of how rare it was to be seen that clearly. "I didn't think anyone noticed." "I did," he said. "Always." The emotion rose slowly, not like a wave, but like a tide. I thought of all the times I dismissed my own importance, told myself it didn't matter. Hearing it reflected back from him felt grounding, like finding solid footing after years of walking on uneven ground. We eventually made our way back toward the house. This time we stepped inside. Dust motes floated in the beam of my phone's flashlight. The rooms were smaller than I remembered, but the echoes were the same. We stood in the living room where the furniture used to be, where arguments and laughter had once shared the same walls. "I don't want to leave things unfinished," he said. "Not with this place, not with us." I nodded. "Then let's not." We didn't solve everything that night. We didn't need to. What mattered was the shift, the mutual understanding settling between us like a quiet agreement. When we left the house and returned to the car, I felt lighter than I had in years. The drive back would be different. So would everything after. And as I started the engine, I realized this wasn't just about revisiting the past. It was about choosing how we carried it forward. The drive back felt longer, not because of distance, but because everything inside me was moving at a different pace. I pulled onto the road, headlights cutting a steady path through the dark, and for a while, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't heavy this time. It felt earned, like the kind you sit with after a meaningful conversation, when words would only get in the way. The road stretched out in front of us, familiar but changed, the same way places do after you revisit them with new understanding. I noticed small things I hadn't before. The rhythm of my brother's breathing, the way he rested his hands in his lap, relaxed now. Whatever tension he carried earlier seemed to have loosened its grip. After a few miles, he spoke again. His voice was quieter, almost reflective. "I don't expect anything to change overnight," he said. "I just didn't want to keep pretending that none of it mattered." I nodded, even though he was looking ahead. "It mattered," I said, "more than I realized. That felt like the truth I'd been circling all evening. For years, I told myself that strength meant endurance, that showing up quietly was enough. and maybe it was. But hearing him name the impact of that presence reshaped how I saw my own life. We passed a stretch of road where the trees opened up, revealing the sky. The stars were clearer now, scattered and steady. I remembered being a young woman driving alone at night, wondering if I'd chosen the right path. I'd made a life that looked fine from the outside. Work, responsibilities, routines. But there had always been a quiet question underneath it all. Did I matter in the ways that counted? Tonight that question felt a little less sharp. I've been thinking, I said slowly, about how often we assume people know what they mean to us. He glanced at me, curious. Yeah, I don't think we say it enough, I continued. We get used to roles. Sister, brother, caretaker, protector. We forget the person underneath. He considered that, then nodded. I think that's true. The miles rolled by. We crossed back into town, streetlights appearing one by one, familiar landmarks returning like old friends. It struck me how easy it would have been for this drive to be just another errand, another forgettable day. Instead, it had